Even tomorrow and Saturday, we're going to have a meeting represented by all leaders from the whole country. Some are members of the ANC, some are members of the EFF, some are members of the MK. And there's nothing wrong with people meeting to say we're going to listen to people. If their parties have got a problem with their members going to listen to people, then it's their own issue. So listening we're going to do. And if our organizations think that listening is a crime, it's wrong, then they will tell us that it's wrong in terms of those issues. Where am I going to get the money to travel? You know, Zianda, for my 6 months as Mkhonto is a national organizer and secretary general, I've never used the money of Mkhonto Sizwe to travel from any place to another place. Not once. Even when we travel out of the country. Because I be able to persuade people to contribute for travel. And I purposefully did that. Like I never got to be dependent on Mkhonto Sizwe on anything. And I said that in the meeting, that I didn't come to suck blood of Mkhonto Sizwe's resources. And that is, we will be able to move from point A to B. If we run out of petrol, we will check if we can be borrowed money to pour petrol. If there is no petrol, we'll hike. We'll stand on the street and say, this way we're going to Mthatha. And then go and speak to the people. That is what we're going to do. But moving from point A to B, we'll be able to move in terms of how the process is going to happen. So the leadership collective that is going to meet, which is not a secret, is going to determine the program of action, the length and the process of consultation, and then we will be able to deal with these issues. Now, comrades, this thing is simple. Don't do things that you don't believe in. And don't associate with projects that you don't believe in. Never ever sacrifice principle on the altar of political convenience. It doesn't matter what happens. Like, it doesn't matter if that is going to break friendship and people that you have known the rest of your life, brotherhood and all of those things there. If principle is broken, you disassociate from it, and decisively so. But in doing so, sometimes you must be considerate of some of the personal circumstances of some of the people that you're dealing with. So that is basically it, that you must never associate with unprincipled positions. You must always stick to principles as to how you deal with politics. These things of, yeah, I'm just there because I'm there for salary purposes and for income. What do we do? Go to leaders of the ANC on the corners and say, but what is this thing that they're doing? They will tell you that that Ramaphosa is nonsense. That Ramaphosa is misleading us. But they won't tell him. Go to EFF people and they will tell you their own characterization of the leader of the organization and what is happening there. But they don't have the courage to tell him. Same in MK. And we can't have political culture like that. We must be able to, when you raise issues internally sharply, you don't have to go and gossip about it anyway. Now all the issues and concerns that I heard about MK, I raised internally. Even against all odds, there is an opportunity to raise an issue about wrongdoing, I would speak and clearly speak against the untouchables there. People who take drugs and tweet at night and insult us. And we'll confront them and say, what is this about? And that is basically how we deal with these issues in terms of what happens. We'll never tiptoe around anyone in terms of principles. Always protect principles. Thank you very much. I thought I had responded to the question. I don't regret leaving the EFF. It's the best decision I ever took in my political life. Because we're legitimating rubbish there. And there was no way that you could dedicate your intellectual muscles and work. And in practice, you realize that this thing which we said we are standing for is not principle. check the conduct of EFF in government and what gets to legitimate such. That was the best decision ever. And everyone that we spoke to, this like they, like they were to criminalize Mbu saying, hey, I will never trust a person who knew that the deputy president is leaving. And then they isolate Mbu saying on the basis that he knew that I'm leaving. It's not only Mbu saying it, those comrades knew, we discussed it, and we reached the same conclusion that we're not being fair to society if we say that this comrade can lead this country. All of us agreed with the people who are leading EFF now. That is basically, that is the reality of the situation. The people who are leading EFF now, all of us were unanimous. And then the issue was, what do we do? If I wanted to destabilize, someone is asking, were you sponsored to destabilize the EFF? If I wanted to destabilize the EFF, I could have started a faction inside and caused interactions and this. Well, then the decision was, like, let me not destabilize the EFF, let me leave. I never spoke about the EFF anyway. And also in respect of the responsibilities that I had, that if I was national organizer or secretary general and then speak about the EFF, it was going to be confused as if I'm speaking on those platforms on behalf of the organization. In terms of how we got to deal with those, part of, although there were dynamics, like part of the things deal with those, part of, although there were dynamics, like part of the things, I think we all agree that if you were to isolate black people, whether they come from the black consciousness, political view, or Pan-Africanist, or economic freedom in our lifetime, or charterist, or those who believe in MK and all other organizations, if you were to isolate black people and say just what do we need as the top priority issues for black people that have to be done in this country, we're going to come out with the same things. The people of South Africa, in terms of aspirations and interests, are not divided. The people of South Africa need jobs. They need stable and healthy environments. They need a society that is free of crime and corruption. They want land. They need to live. They want to have access to quality education. The black people are not divided in terms of aspirations. But for narrow political purposes, we get to be divided. That is why we will be going to the people to ask, do we form a political party? If the advice is no, we will be able to accept that guidance in terms of what happens. So I don't need any position of a responsibility to survive in life or to have a voice, by the way. I don't need to be a president or secretary general to have a voice. Actually, my voice is much more clearer when I speak without any position of responsibility. So most of you have never heard me speak openly about many issues because I respected the positions that I have. As a deputy president, I couldn't say certain things. As a national organizer, I couldn't say certain things. As a secretary general, I could say certain things, but now I can make open observations about just what is happening. Perhaps even without a position, my voice will be much more amplified in terms of how we push for the agenda of the return of our land. I last spoke to President Zuma on the day when we had a press conference in Durban, and I said to him, thank you very much, Comrade President, for having given me the opportunity to lead and for entrusting me with the responsibility to be national organizer and Secretary General. I really appreciate And then the other thing I said was that if this deployment to Parliament, I think for stability of the organization, I can still add value to the organization even as an ordinary member of the National High Command and then contribute to its growth. That is what I said to the last conversation which we had with President Zuma. I did explain the issue and reminded President Zuma of the conversations on what ended up with the Malawi trip. And throughout my explanation and reminding him of our conversation in Namibia, he agreed to that. He says, "Ngakumbula." When the DSG sitting next to me was even saying, wrote me a note that you are safe, they won't do anything to you. Then I was asked to leave the meeting, and then the meeting remained there. And then they said, I don't believe anything that he said. He wants to take over the organization. Actually, we must go and reverse all the decisions that he has taken. Let's disband all the structures. Let's reverse everything, including the constitution. I said, people can do whatever they want to do. We played our part. If the conviction is that what we're doing is wrong, it's okay. Like, we move on in terms of how we deal with these issues. There is no political party which is going to be funded from Malawi. Like, there is no political party that is going to be funded by Bushiri. We are going to listen to the people and will get guidance from the people as to how do we move forward. I'm not, this comrade who asked the question he left. I'm not starting any solo project. We must stop these things that political parties are personal projects, like a music band, Brenda Fassie and the Black Dudes. That if Brenda Fassie is not there, the Black Dudes can't operate. A political party can't have that character. But you have got political organizations in this country which are like Brenda Fassie and the Black Dudes. Where if Brenda Fassie is not there, the Black Dudes are not there. We can't have an organization like that. There must be an organization that exists in every corner of South Africa, whether there is a Floyd or no Floyd, or whoever is there must be the expression of the collective ideals of the political party. That is basically how we dealing with all of those issues. I think we can take the last round of questions. I don't want to talk about that. Yeah. I don't want to talk about that. Maybe when we do a one-to-one interview, I'll tip you. Zandile, me and you are together. And Zian. Sure. I think that is your opinion. Let's give it to you. It's your own opinion. Like, it's not a question. Like, really. And we can't help you. And different people will have different perspectives in terms of what happens. Like, I do know, Ntsiki, I think in conducting political work, like I think those that we have worked with before, the difficulty that they have is when we have got leadership responsibilities. One, I refuse to have private meetings or private engagements. So there is a lady from Mpumalanga who, I think it's called Mary or something like that. So the first meeting I attended of MK, there was a decision, I didn't even know who she is. There was a decision to expel her, and then another meeting. And actually, in the first meeting, I even said that, please don't expel comrades, it's too early, let us go and engage with them. And it's in the minutes of MK that said, don't expel her, further engagements and all of those things. Then another decision was taken, but some of the decisions had to be written and signed by me, even when you have expressed a different view inside. Then she asked for a private meeting to brief me. Then I said, I can't do that. And I said it actually in the national officials meeting that majority of times, comrades would want to meet you privately and be buddy-buddy so that they are protected when they do wrong things in the organization. And that is the conduct that we got to deal with. You know, I'm very close to Mzobe. We always say that we have known each other for more than 20 years, but he was head of presidency. When I was doing wrong things, I'll write him a letter that you're not doing your work properly as head of presidency. and wrote it in an organizational report that, yes, and you will also give me criticisms as well that, hey, you're too closed up and all of those things, but that is how organizations are run. You can't run it through friendship in terms of how you then get to conduct yourselves. But if there are other issues, we can be able to listen to that. MK is not tribalist. It's not a tribalist organization. There's no tribalism. I never got to encounter tribalism. But I know there are people who mischaracterize the organization because also it was still at its formative stages. So there are people who truly believe that it's an organization to liberate Zulu-speaking people. Into Zulu. So there will be those who will say that. And they will say that to the president. And there are those who believed that, but it's not the overall character of MK. These extremely brilliant comrades and activists that are in Kontowe Sizwe, who understand politics properly, organizing, mobilization, and there's never been a problem of tribalism which can be elevated. I know there was an incident now of Teniso, brilliant young man who is the leader of the MK Youth League, made a legitimate, honest, innocent mistake about referring to Tsonga-speaking people as Shangan and everything else. They like it. For some people, it lands well. For some people, it doesn't land well. But I think a substantial number take it derogatory, as a derogatory reference. But he didn't mean bad. Like, he was not doing it in a vindictive and tribalist way. I know him that Teniso is a proper comrade who has got a bright future in the politics of South Africa. So there's no tribalism in the organization. I don't agree with the analysis of Julius about President Zuma. I don't. I've got to interact with him and all of those other things. But I know there are times where I think former president or former secretary general who worked with him for the longest time in the ANC, Halima Motlanthe, I think when he did an interview with Sizwe, he said that the limitation with President Zuma is that sometimes he can be persuaded about an issue outside of organizational structures and want to take a decision based on what was the persuasion outside of organizational structures. So that becomes a dilemma for any, particularly as a Secretary General, because once you have taken resolutions collectively, your expectation is that you must collectively communicate and defend those resolutions. And that time he has now reconsidered the decisions that were taken before, and then it then becomes difficult to move forward in terms of I think that observation, which I share, was already communicated by President, former SG of the ANC, Halima Motlanthe, when President Zuma was in office. So that dynamic is a limitation generally, that he meets way too many people. And in the process, sometimes he meets people and then he says, and then those people interpret that as if he agreed to whatever they were saying. And that is the dynamic. But I don't agree at all that he uses people. He is trusted by the people of KwaZulu-Natal and by the people of South Africa. The genuine building was to expand the message of what he stands for. And he is not opportunist in terms of how he communicates political principle. Like, even in closed spaces, there could be I'll give you an example, for instance, that the Moroccan embassy wanted to buy the position of MK to say that MK should support Morocco's operation over Western Sahara. And then there are those closer to him who visited Morocco, were promised money, And then they came back and said, MK must agree with Morocco's oppression of Western Sahara. Then when he realizes that they won't understand this, then he called me into the meeting. Then said to the Moroccan ambassador and political secretary that we are not going to agree with you. If we are going to have engagements with the Kingdom of Morocco, we must talk to the SADR here and the Polisario Front, which is the liberation movement fighting for the liberation of Western Sahara. And then we agreed on that principled positions. I wrote a letter on the 27th of March to the Polisario Front to say that the president will engage with you before he engages with Morocco, because it's now 50 years since the oppression got to happen over Western Sahara by Morocco. And you saw what happened. Immediately we were suspended. What is that? Not suspended, that thing of redeployed. Then the Moroccan government issued a statement which is undersigned by Mkhonto we Sizwe to say that Mkhonto we Sizwe supports its oppression over Western Sahara. No meeting to discuss that, no national high command, no officials. Someone just says, and the people who did that, it's those who went to Morocco. Like, that is basically the whole thing. Like, there's no, and in the official record, in the minutes of the National High Command, is that President Zuma is going to mediate a discussion between Western Sahara Liberation Forces and Morocco to find a settlement. It has been going in for a very long time. But after, immediately we leave, because they couldn't do that in our presence, obviously. They couldn't. Then they saw an opportunity that, yeah, now we're going to maybe press that jukebox or to sing for us. And then and you can see that statement, which is issued in the name of MK, is written by the Moroccan embassy here in South Africa, to impose a position on MK on the basis that there will be money exchanges. And that is what happens. Also, even with this, you remember when we did a press conference, Muslim Judicial Council. So part of these scoundrels, they go to speak to the Muslim Judicial Council and say, no, please go and speak to President Zuma, say to him that he must remove the SG, and that is the only basis he will give money.